Of course. Thank you everyone for coming on this sunny day. Today we are joined by Carol and Robin from Chugach Regional Resources Commission. And they're going to talk to you a little about food sovereignty. And so
Thank you,
welcome.
Christina. So I'll introduce myself and our organization, and then we'll move into what community wellness is and our efforts in the Chugach region. So Chugach Regional Resources Commission, or CRRC, we call ourselves, is a tribal nonprofit. We are a consortium, and we focus on natural resources in the Chugach region. The Chugach region is a large region. We starting here, and it just depends on where we start. But it spans from Cordova, the native village of Yak, up to Valdez, over to Titlik, Chaniga, Seward, where the Chugach Native Tribe is, around the outer coast of the Kenai Peninsula, over to Port Graham, and then the village of Nanamalek. I'm from Seward, that's where I grew up. And I still live there and raise my family there, and I work on site at Alutiiq Pride Marine Institute. Alutiiq Pride Marine Institute is one of our physical sites located right on the waterfront in Seward. And we focus a lot of our tribally led science on monitoring the ocean. And that comes from directive from our board, which is comprised of representatives from each of the communities that I spoke about. And we'll dive into that a little bit more. Robin's going to go into depth on ocean acidification, but we also monitor for harmful algal blooms, paralytic shellfish toxins. We grow kelp, and we do our efforts are really focused on food security and food sovereignty in the region. And that translates from our natural resources. So we have quite a few departments, well, not quite a few, but we have several departments. We have our Tribal Fish and Wildlife Department, which there's a big presence here in Cordova. And that side of our department, or that side of our organization, really focuses on subsistence rights. So we do a lot of like board of fish, board of game, testimony writing, and training with our tribal members. We have about 1,500 tribal members throughout this region. And so depending on what their concerns are, their needs, whether it is extending seasons for hunting, increasing the amount of animal takes, understanding fish populations, these are all things that we focus on. We also have an environmental monitoring department, and we have our IDAP coordinator here with us, Jen Kyokin. And we do actually have quite a few vacancies open in that department right now. So if you know anybody, send them our way. But that's an important part of what we do. We also, one of our big departments is education outreach. I'm an education director, and Robin is our education specialist. And then our science department, which I talked about with Alutiiq Pride. And Allison Carl is one of our biologists, and she's also the lab manager at Alutiiq by our tribe. What our tribe lab? The biology lab. Yes. Okay. So first, well, not first, but I would like to acknowledge this is our CRRC, Chugach Region Land Acknowledgement, and our board spent a lot of time refining this and writing it. And so I'm just going to read it to you because I don't want to miss anything. And they put a lot of time into it. So we would like to acknowledge the space and the land that we utilize for our institute, Marine Institute in Seward, and the land our tribes, as the traditional region of the Chugach people of Alaska. The Chugach people encompass the Sokpiak, which translates to like a real person, and the Alutiiq people who have lived and continue to live off the coastal land of the water of the Gulf of Alaska, Prince William Sound, Lower Cook Inlet, and Resurrection Bay for thousands of years. We want to acknowledge our land and our water, which brings us life and culture, and our tribe to maintain our relationships with the land. These include Cordova and the native village of Eyak, Nanwalek, Muchek, Port Graham, Seward, and the Chugach Native Tribe, Tititlik, and the Valdez Native Tribe. The purpose of this statement is to acknowledge, appreciate, and respect for our land, waters, and people. And I would like to include, because this is the land acknowledgement for Luchik Pride Marine Institute, we don't have the acknowledgement of the Eyak people in here, but I would like to acknowledge the homeland of the Eyak people today. So community well-being. Let's talk about well-being. And I know this is a science talk, but for us at CRRC, we directly relate the health of our environment to the wellness of the people, the tribal members, and people in general of the Chugach region. And so what does well-being mean to you in your life? What makes you feel well in your community? And you can just say it. I won't make you raise your hand like you're a third grader. But living in your community, what makes you feel healthy and connected to your community?
My friends.
Your friends make you feel connected? Right.
Like harvesting plants.
Oh, yes, harvesting plants in season.
Subsistence practices.
Yes, subsistence practices.
Affordable housing.
Right? That's what
any housing.
does community well-being look like? Yeah, a place where you have a home, where you have connections and accessibility to the lifestyle that you like to live. And what are some barriers in our communities? You know, Seward experiences some of the barriers that Cordova experiences. Our community, Seward, Cordova, Valdez, these are cities with tribes within them. And then our other communities like Tititlik and Chiniga, Nanwalek, Port Graham, these are villages that are primarily Alaska Native populations. And so their community wellness might look different than community wellness in Cordova or Seward. So these are good questions to just kind of start to ask yourself, like, what do I do in my community to make me feel healthy? And, well, there's my name and my title. Healthy Foods, yay! So we collaborate, we work with a lot of different people. We work with a lot of different organizations. We work with a lot of different tribal members, community members, elders, youth, the GLUE population, which is our middle-aged population. And a lot of these community wellness ideas, and what we recognize that are indicators of a healthy community come through conversation with people. It comes through coming into communities, speaking with people, hearing their concerns in their environment. And it's the people that are walking the beaches every day. It is the people that are, taking their kids to school, that are on the coast, experiencing their environment, that see things first. And often we call these people our citizen scientists, our observers, and they're seeing the changes in the environment that we want to know about, so we can respond. And often that starts with the food we eat. Now, I know Cordova, back in the day, before 1964 earthquake, was the razor capital of the world. This was a huge economic driver. This was a huge food source. And after that, the population decimated, and that was devastating for people. That's just one big event that affected people's, not only their income, that directly affects your wellness and your, and your connection to the land that you live on and your traditional practices or the things that you continue to do as a family. Hey, Daryl. Welcome. And now, like I said, often that just brings us right down to the food we eat. So CRRC's mission and food sovereignty is to focus on those natural resources. And these are all the natural resources that our tribal members identified as really specific keystone species that indicate the health of not just the environment, but the people who eat those foods and the people who practice those subsistence practices. Because it's not just the food you eat, it's the activity that you do to get your food. And that is something that creates a really healthy lifestyle, and we view as being this overall wellness within our region. And so this was a mural that was painted by a local artist. She's actually grew up with this artist. She's from Moose Pass. Her name is Sarah Glasser. And so you can see there, this is a seasonal map, but it progresses through the foods that are harvested and collected throughout the seasons in the Chugach region. And so we love to work with local artists to be able to communicate science through art. And this is a beautiful example of that. And it just highlights not just the animals, but the plants. And I want to point out the water, the ocean, the imak. This is the life. This is where the life source comes for people in this region, the Sukyak people, the Iyak people. And when the oil spill happened in 1989, that was the day that people in the region, or tribal members, said the water died. And when the water died, what do you think that did to the wellness and the health of the people in the region? It was devastating. And it's one of my first memories as a child. And I get a little teary just thinking about it because I have such an emotional connection to it. It was devastating. You know, people lost their main source of income. People lost their food source. There was people who couldn't go on living because it was unfathomable of not being able to eat your food from the source that it's supposed to come from. And so I just, I bring that up because it matters. The health of our environment matters to the wellness of the people that live in this region. So we run our Healthy Foods program, and this supports our food sovereignty in the region. And it's threaded through a lot of our departments, but it is part of essentially everything that we do. And I tell this to all ages, to children, to elders, to you here. Everything we do comes down to the food we eat. And so supporting species through research and restoration, beach enhancement. At Lutic Pride, we grow shellfish. We grow 8 different species of shellfish, I believe. And then we take on novel species, and we'll grow species for Southeast Alaska who are struggling to regain their population growth. Because this is not just something that's happening in the Chugach region. It's something that Southeast Alaska is battling with. So we do help intertribally for people across the state. So this is a big effort on what we do. I talked about Board of Fish and Board of Game advocacy for regulatory work for subsistence rights. This is incredibly important and incredibly daunting. So I don't know if any of you have been to a Board of Fish meeting or board a game, but it is, there's a very specific way to present your testimony. And for lack of better terms, it's a very Western way. And so when our tribal members come to us, I'm going to use Port Graham as an example. Port Graham came to us a few years ago and said, you know, we would like to our community would like to be able to harvest another moose. And we're noticing the season shifting a little bit. And so CRRC went to work, and there was a representative, Larissa Jimmy. She did amazing. She, you know, we helped write the testimony. She practiced it. She got up there. She gave the testimony. Daryl probably remembers this well. And she won. They won. They extended the season, or the season was shifted a little bit, and then they could take 2 moose for the community. And so that was huge. That was something that CRRC really celebrated. Sharing traditional foods and creating space for gatherings. So this is my wheelhouse. This is where I just love creating space for people to come together, talk about hard things, talk about concerns, lean into it, but we're doing that over a cup of tea and traditional foods. And that food is the food that has come from the land that we live on, and often it is prepared in a way that has been passed down from generation to generation. And these are very special foods. And we really like to elevate that and support that and make it accessible, because it makes us feel good. We feel well, we feel healthy when we eat the foods that we've prepared and we've gathered. And it's like that moment where you're like, this is why we do what we do. And then creating avenues for healthy foods for our tribes. Kelp. You live in Cordova, so you must know like the buzz about kelp and Build Back Better, and you know all of this initiative towards kelp. And CRRC's right in there with us, you know, with the state. We're in our 4th year of growing kelp seedling. It's about to go out to all of our farmers. We provide all of this to our Indigenous farmers for free. If other farmers, you know, outside of our communities or are not tribal members are interested, they can order it, they pay for it, we ship it out for them. This is done in a very sustainable way. All the source that is collected locally. It is scored and chilled and cared for very meticulously when it's happened. Just all happened, so it was all hands on deck when it was happening. So we are very open to different avenues and thinking outside the box. We like to be as innovative as our board and our tribal members encourage us to be. So here's some more of our healthy foods program. All these pictures are out of Seward, because that's my home turf, and all these people are very, very dear to me. We have part of our healthy foods program is a hydroponics unit. You guys still have that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So we have a Conant size hydroponic unit, and I'm trying to see, no, we don't have any pictures. That's from in there, but it's not the size. Can't really see the size of the Conant. So we can grow like, I think it's like up to 800 plants at one time. And so we grow lettuce and basil, dill, mint, kale, mustard greens. I mean, the list could just go on. And we grow it in collaboration with the Chugach Native Tribe. They provide all the greens for the tribal members. at no cost. Elders always receive greens first, and it's been very, very successful. The tribe is really involved. They provide volunteers, interns. We also have sometimes our Lutic Pride interns come and volunteer. Jen's daughter is actually really involved and works really closely with me in the Connex. And also we have a game cleaning Connex. So this is Eric Clock. He's a Katuchek Native elder, but he's got family ties here. So if you're familiar with Alice Clock, that was his grandmother. And Raven Cunningham is his niece, and she also works for CRRC in our tribal fish and wildlife department. So Eric is vacuum sealing some halibut here. This is Dolly Wiles and Jeanette. I forget Jeanette's last name, but Wardlow, that's right. And Jeanette's picking up some greens up here. We have Colette Brantingham. She is a Q&T elder. One of our young hunters had shot a seal in Resurrection Bay and had brought it to the tribe, and the tribe called CRRC and said, hey, will you bring up some of those, some of the materials from the Connex to clean the seal? And we're like, oh yeah, of course, here we go. So she's right there, Colette's partitioning out the ribs. Here's another picture of Eric. This was one of our pieces of equipment he took to his house to grind up some deer meat. Deer came from Montague. And then, Jen, there's Jen and Colette, and they are getting the fat off the hide. And then we cut all that fat up and jarred it to render it. And then that was distributed out to elders. And then we also use that oil. We've used it all up now, but we use it at different food gatherings. Yeah, that's just a little bit about our Healthy Foods program. I think. Yeah. All right, this is kind of our midpoint. Like I said, we love to work with local artists. And so this was one of our ways of communicating science through the species that we grow at Lutic Pride. So we actually have this huge on the outside of a marine institute. But this is a saying that is said throughout the region when the tide is out, the table is set. And these are all species that are grown at Lutic Pride. Kelp, not necessarily bull kelp. We've tried to do bull kelp. It doesn't do well farmed. Butter clams, cockles, bidarkies, which are also the Western name for that is chitin, I believe. Mussels. Actually, we don't grow mussels or sea urchins, but there is some concern about sea urchins right now. So who knows? Maybe we'll see.
We could.
Maybe we'll see at API. They're delicious.
They're growing them in Monterey.
Are they?
Yeah. Cool.
They're a delicacy too.
Yeah. It's interesting because we're removing them from places where they're overpopulating and they're eating kelp, too much kelp, and they're growing them in places that they need to be food for otters.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Sweet.
So from here, I'm going to hand it over to Robin, our education and outreach specialist. And thank you so much. Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions right now, or should we just forge ahead?
I had a question about kelp. I was curious if you guys are working on markets as well as seeding, but markets for the kelp.
That's the big question everybody has. As far as marketing goes, we do not. We're more processing is something that we're really concerned about, and how to process the amount of kelp that's being harvested. So that is something that we're continually kind of going back to the drawing board, coming up with ideas. There's a lot of potential with kelp, as far as bioplastics and biofuel. We do workshopping on using it as fertilizer, fermenting it, eating it, different recipes. But at this point, the scale that farms are harvesting, that's a lot. And traditionally, like, the use of kelp is typically, done in small batches as the season is appropriate. So that's something that we have 2 mariculture liaisons within our organization, Brianna Murphy and Sean Adele, who lives here in Cordova. And Brianna lives in Seward, actually moves past, but you consider her a Sewardite.
Well, yeah, thanks. And yeah, kelp is something that we are constantly working on, thinking about different avenues for what marketing could be or what markets are available to us. But I think we are more concerned with processing, and we have some cool projects coming up with equipment possibly, and we're really interested in that. And I think the difficulty with kelp mariculture as an industry right now is like, how do we do both at the same time? How do we do all of it at the same time? Because that's really what will move that industry forward. And as far as CRRC is concerned, we really want to make sure that we are opening avenues for our tribal communities to be involved in the capacity that they want to be involved. And so we're figuring out that as well, and the priorities of our tribes when it comes to the mariculture industry, and then also kelp farming in general, and what that could be for environmental remediation or for food. Yeah. Okay.
You want to switch spots and then I'll be your
Yeah, if you want to, for sure.
slide mover?
Yeah, that sounds great. You can move it. Cool. Okay. So yeah, my name is Robin. I am CRRC's Education Outreach Specialist. I am from Seward. I live in Anchorage now, but I travel very often to be at Alutiiq Primary Institute. So I'm always down there bothering these guys. I am going to talk a bit more about an example of how our research and monitoring supports wellness, food security, and food sovereignty in our region. I am an education outreach specialist, so I'm going to do my best to talk to you about ocean acidification and our research laboratory in Seward, but I want to focus more about our program and how that operates. But we will first talk briefly about ocean acidification. Perfect. Okay, so ocean acidification is a process during which the ocean absorbs carbon dioxide. And during this process, we see a decrease in our ocean's pH, making the ocean water more acidic. And during this process, we also see a decrease in carbonate ions. So it's this chemical process that occurs in our ocean. About 30% of the carbon that we emit is absorbed by the ocean, which is not a small percentage. It's a really big carbon sink. And oftentimes when we talk about ocean acidification, carbonate ions or calcium carbonate gets brought up a lot. Does anyone know why that is? These guys know. Yeah, it's related to a threat to marine life, and specifically it's related to shell-forming creatures like shellfish. I'm going to go to the next slide. And when we think about shellfish, they need to have calcium carbonate or carbonate ions to build their shells. It's their building blocks, it's what they need. And because ocean acidification decreases the amount of carbonate ions in the water, it makes it really hard for our shellfish to build their shells. And so this is the threat that is often brought up most regularly when we talk about ocean acidification. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. And one thing that you'll hear me say is this term aragonite, which is the solid form of calcium carbonate that shellfish create. It's what they use to build their shells. That's the term we're going to talk about, and you'll see it come up a little bit later. And in Alaska, we're in a really important spot when it comes to ocean acidification research and monitoring, because Alaska is very susceptible to ocean acidification because we have cold water. And cold water absorbs more CO2 than warm water. And so it's really important that we monitor ocean acidification or ocean chemistry because of this, and also because, of course, we depend upon so many species in the ocean. Right, yeah, thanks, Carol. And so we know that ocean acidification directly impacts the building blocks for our shellfish. It impacts the carbonate ions those shellfish need to build their shells at a very important life stage, a critical life stage when they're just itty bitty babies, when they're larvae. And if these shellfish in their larval stage have to seek out and use much more energy to go find the calcium carbonate, the carbonate ions in the ocean to build their shells, it kind of puts them into like a shellfish burnout. And that's when you see larval die off in that really critical life stage for them. And this doesn't only just impact shellfish, right? It also impacts calcifying plankton species. And those species are the basis of our food web. And so those are going to impact all of our fish species. So for example, salmon, juvenile pink salmon are dependent upon pteropods, which are tiny organisms that are also calcifying and shell building. And up to about 50% of a pink salmon's diet as a juvenile is pteropods. And so if you're missing pteropods from the food web, you're going to lose some pink salmon potentially. You'll lose the prey species all the way up the food chain. And these are all foods that our communities depend upon. Our tribes depend upon, we depend upon, not just for food, but also for commercial harvest as well. But what I want to point out in this slide is not just the fish species, not just the shellfish species that our communities need, but also sea otters. Sea otters are a really important species for our region, not necessarily as a food source for many of our communities, but as something that our community members and our tribal members harvest for cultural purposes. So this is not just about food, it's also about cultural continuity and supporting tradition and culture, however that might look for our tribal communities as well. You can keep going. Now, Carol did a really great job of tying the why, the heart of CRRC, to our monitoring programs, to our healthy food programs. And you can see that ocean acidification is something that we need to monitor to ensure that our tribes know what's going on with our ocean chemistry. And our job at CRRC is to understand that information and give it to our tribal communities and empower our tribal communities to be able to make their own management decisions with that information. So we want to provide them with as much info as we can so they can make their own decisions when it comes to their foods, right? But I think what's really cool about our ocean acidification program is how we do that. So we do it in a couple different ways. One way is with continuous monitoring, and you can see here, this is beautiful. Oh, you can go back, Carol, sorry. This is our beautiful Seward on a day much like today in Cordova. It's always like sunny in Seward too, just like it is today here in Cordova. And here's our facility, Alutiiq Pride Marine Institute, right here, right on the water. And we actually have an intake hundreds of feet below the surface that brings in water from Resurrection Bay, and we're continually sampling that water to look at ocean acidification, the ocean chemistry of that water. And it's really important to note that we've been doing this for a very long time. By very long, I mean we've done it the longest in Alaska. It's not the longest time, but over a decade. And we're very proud of that we are the longest continuous monitoring program in the state. And this is really important because ocean acidification, you need a long-term data set in order to understand the trend. Ocean acidification, the pH of the ocean, this can change seasonally, whether it's primary production in the summertime and you have a lot of phytoplankton in the water, you need more carbon, or we have a lot of freshwater inputs in different locations. In Resurrection Bay, you have so much freshwater input, tons of it. We have glaciers right next to us, we have the whole Harding ice field. And so it's really important that we're monitoring this over a very long time to be able to understand trends, not just like what's happening season to season, but what are we seeing that is like a permanent trend, or at least a trend for right now. That's where we're going to be able to understand a snapshot of how the ocean chemistry is truly changing. Now what's really special about our ocean acidification program is that we don't just do continuous monitoring, we also do discrete monitoring. And this is only possible with the support of our tribes and communities in our region and beyond our region. So we depend upon community samplers to take samples of ocean water to send to us at Alutiiq Pride to test the ocean chemistry. But not only are we having our community samplers test ocean water for the ocean chemistry, we're also having them look at those other parameters of ocean health that Carol mentioned at the beginning of her presentation. We're having them take plankton toes to look for harmful algae species. We're having our community samplers collect mussels, and we're testing the mussels, the flesh of the mussels, to actually look at paralytic shellfish toxin presence in those mussels as well. And what's special about this is we're able to pay our community samplers. So we're able to support and honor our samplers' time and energy that they are putting into protecting their resources, protecting our resources out there in our region, which is really cool.
I have questions.
Yeah.
Can anyone in the community be a community sampler?
That's a great question. Jen?
Sure. In a short, sweet answer, sure. But you want to get trained up, obviously, to become a community monitor, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and Jen coordinates a lot of this program, which is the Chugach Region Ocean Monitoring Program, and it houses all of our sort of variables that we are looking at and our environmental factors that we are sampling for. And we do trainings and offer trainings at different times of the year. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, if you know anybody or
if you know anybody
are interested,
definitely let us know. Yeah, we'll be happy to. So once we receive samples back to us, we will run tests on them. And we'll usually receive samples in batches, and they usually come in these glass bottles here. And once we receive them, we can attach them to our percolator. Has anyone heard of a percolator before? Yeah, they're pretty cool. We are really excited that this year we have received our second percolator. There are only 20 percolators in the world, so we have 2 of them. 10%, it's very cool. And percolators it's a series of sensors, basically. The system that is a series of sensors that is looking at different parameters of ocean chemistry. And so when you walk into our ocean acidification lab, you'd see this. And this is one of our percolators here. It's a big box. And we recently received a second one that has a very cool little humpback whale knob on it. And this is like one of the first percolators ever made, and this is one of the newest percolators ever created. And these are like custom equipment, really. They're sort of one of a kind. Each of them is a bit different, and they're all made by a man named Burke Hill. And he was able to come up and install our latest one, which was really special, and provide some assistance, getting it going, getting it set up, helping our technicians understand the ins and outs of the percolators. And so we have 2 percolators now, which means we're able to run our community samples that we receive from our samplers around the region, and we are able to run our continuous monitoring from Resurrection Bay. Before we had to cut off Resurrection Bay, put in a sample, and then switch it back out once that sample was run. And now we don't have to do that at all. So we have this extra capacity that we're building in our ocean acidification lab, which is really cool. And so our percolators look at a lot of different things. The parameters we usually have them look at that are really important to know are partial CO2, which is looking at the amount of CO2 in seawater, and then total CO2 as well. And really what we're deriving from the calculations that we get from our percolator is the pH of the water. So what's the acidity level, and then also the level or saturation of aragonite, which is that term that I mentioned at the beginning, which is that available calcium carbonate for our shellfish to build their shells. And this is what we really are pulling out for our communities here. This is the important information that we want to share. Now, recently, McKnight Indian Tribe, which is not one of our communities, but was very excited about our program, wanted to start sampling. And they were able to use sampling equipment that we were provided to them to get their interns involved. So young high school, university-age students involved in the sampling. And they've only been doing this for a few months. So this is very brand new to them. But we had the interns come visit Alutiiq Pride Marine Institute, and our technician was able to pull up the data sheet for their samples and give them all the information about their pH and their aragonite levels, which is a really cool full circle moment to see the interns like understand the data that they had collected and see the samples they had collected in a data sheet, in an Excel sheet, to see where their samples went into the percolator. And it was a really cool educational opportunity as well, that we're still developing, but really cool to see that full circle moment with those young people too. So these are the communities where we are sampling. Our regional communities: Namwalik, Port Graham, Chugach, Titlik, Eyak here in Cordova, Chugach and Seward, and then in Valdez as well. But we operate outside of our region too. And we operate as far north as Utiavik and as far out as Adak. So we have not just developed this community sampling program in our region, but other places as well. And what's really cool about this program is that it is tribally led, it's tribally focused. And that means that we are able to get a very specific picture of a very local environment. And oftentimes for, tribal communities, that's really important to know what's happening directly in front of the beaches where they're harvesting the shellfish that will be impacted by ocean acidification. And so that is the power of this community sampling program. And we are really honored to be able to work for a tribally led organization. Really grateful to have the leadership of our board members, our tribal members, our elders, our youth. It's a really cool part of our jobs, and we are so lucky to be able to work with fantastic researchers that drive such hard-hitting and cutting-edge science. And we're also really lucky to work with powerful communities who want to continue to focus on the wellness and build the wellness of those communities. And we recognize that not all of us get to work for a tribally led organization, but all of us must engage with our tribes. That's our responsibility. We must listen to our tribal members, be led by our tribal members. And if you're like, how do we do that? Where do I start? I don't know. We can help you with that. We can. And so I would like to introduce Collective Alaska Native Perspectives. And this is a 3-day intensive workshop that Carol facilitates and leads. And we bring in elders, tribal members from our communities. And we spend 3 days talking in discussion, having hard conversations about lots of different stuff, but really we talk about Alaska Native values, the history of Alaska Native peoples in Alaska and in the region. We talk about cross-cultural communication and education, and this is supported by the Community Organized Restoration and Learning Network, which Prince William Sound Science Center is a partner on, and Christina has been to camp, we call it camp, before. And we are lucky to have the support to bring collective Alaska Native perspectives to researchers and those professionals in the Chugach region. And right now, this is sort of focused on researchers and scientists working with tribal communities around the region, but we really appreciate anyone's involvement in this program. It's a pretty special experience that we're excited to bring to Cordova in a few months, next year, springtime. And we'll be working out the dates for that really soon and be able to share save the date with all of you. I don't know, Carol, if you want to add something to camp? But it's clear. It's fun.
This is the one that we hosted in Kodiak. You covered it really well. We will be hosting here spring 2025. We're deciding the dates next week with our network. And then we will put that out for the community here in Cordova. Any questions? Comments?
So what are the remedies when pH and acidification are off? It's a big system, how do you address it?
That's a really good question. So we have noticed that kelp helps very locally. When there is a healthy kelp forest or a healthy kelp farm, we see lowered levels of aragonite and the lower levels of ocean acidification. So that is something that we're noticing, but it's not like it's not like it's local. So within that farm or within that forest, the pH levels are healthy, the ocean acidification is low. But I don't know, Allison or Jen, with our OA results, how do we respond to that?
I don't, similarly to the kelp situation, one thing too, that it's like small and localized, but it's clam beds actually. So it's like one of these like vicious cycles where it's like if the ocean chemistry is out of control, it's not good for the clams, but the clams actually can contribute to healthy ocean chemistry. And so things like keeping clam shells in their clam beds afterwards actually contributes that arsenic back into that system. And so there's a lot of like local things you can do. If it were like all of Prince William Sound, I don't know. But if it's like small localized spots, there are some projects that can be done to help bring the levels back to where they should be.
Is that part of the reason kelp's being popularized so much?
And different people are doing different things. So like Native Village of Eyak, they are doing kind of at least a year ago, they were doing this experiment of creating more of a curtain than a farm, and seeing how that affected the OA levels locally. I haven't talked with them recently to see, how that project is going, but I am interested to see if that is helping.
Does the Science Center administer the monitors, and is that how they?
Our mariculture liaison does it for us here and sends us our samples. So Sean Adele, he collects samples here for Cordova and sends them to Sioux for us. Yes,
I was gonna ask, when you guys share stuff, I hope it's not just you saying, here, Carol, here's the report for this water. I hope you reported it to somebody else and sharing it.
Oh,
So I guess I'm wondering, who do you guys share it with?
absolutely. No, Robin and I are not scientists.
Not this kind of scientist.
Not this kind of scientists. We do a lot of listening, and then we share out what our scientists are doing. So maybe Alec, I don't know if you're comfortable talking about that.
Absolutely.
But our scientists definitely have a process. So, like all the results get posted live on the Alutiiq Pride website. And if there is for some reason a PST, like a paralytic shellfish toxin within the community, we send out a public service announcement like immediately to tribal administrators. And then they distribute that within the community. So that happened this summer in Tutupiq. And so when we went for our community visit, there was the PSP up on the bulletin board, and we were like, oh, okay, great, this is how they're getting the information out. And then also just like word of mouth, tribes have their way of disseminating that information. And I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah. And then as part of, because these are for the HAB stuff, the harmful algae monitoring, phytoplankton monitoring, and the ocean chemistry monitoring are all part of that EBOS funding. And so through that, we post that. It's not super exciting right now. It's kind of just numbers and letters, but that all also gets posted through the Alaska Ocean Observation System online as well. So other scientists can also be collaborative and look at that data with us. And then just to add on to what Carol's saying about sending it to the tribes, so that's something that our scientists, along with our executive director, has worked very hard on like refining how we want to do that, because some communities do this monitoring for themselves, like in other regions, and they can just like, oh, we'll post on Facebook or on the tribe's Facebook, but we don't want to like cause a ruckus. Yeah, we don't want to like stir up trouble for anybody, and so we send it directly to the chief, directly to the tribal admin, and they can now govern that however they want to go.
Yeah.
And when we go there, they might say like, yeah, it's July, we know. Like,
Yeah.
we're not gonna eat that.
Probably already on it.
And we, all summer we've been going to communities. And so these community visits, we deliver all of the signs that we're doing. And it's often us and a couple other people that go into the communities and we present, and then we sit down and we eat lunch and we have tea and we talk about what people are worried about. And we have a conversation. And so that happened this summer in Nanwalek, Titlik, where else did we go? To Chugach. And then tomorrow we're presenting to NBE. And then Port Graham is to be determined this month. And then NBE, we haven't quite set up the time for them yet. That'll be easy.
Oh,
B&T.
B&T, sorry.
B&T.
It's like my brain is slowing down.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we're able to give this data to our communities in the way that makes the most sense. And like Ali said, that's something that we are continuously working on. And yeah, we are super open to tribal members or community members just like reaching out to us if they feel comfortable doing that. And then on our end, working to be more efficient and effective in our communications to our tribes as well. We don't want to operate in a silo. We want to make sure we're handing this information over to our tribal communities and to our participating communities so they can make harvest decisions that make sense for those communities. Yeah. And I think maybe to your point, when we think about like ocean acidification, I say that a lot, but really what we're monitoring more, and Alan and I were talking about this today, we're really looking at all the ocean chemistry processes. And because our continuous monitoring is longer, it's just a longer program we've been running, we can begin to see trends, but for a lot of our community sampling, you know, we don't have as much data yet. And so right now we're in the sort of zone of like, let's just get monitoring. Let's make sure we have community samplers who are excited, passionate, being paid for this work so we can begin the monitoring process, because even if right now we're not seeing huge concerns as far as ocean chemistry or pH level goes, we need to be on it for the future. And what's really cool about this program as well is that we operate from a tribal lens with our communities, but we also operate within the larger ocean acidification network in Alaska. And so we're connected to our communities. We're also connected to other ongoing research efforts and monitoring efforts in the state as well. And so we're trying to, pull power from everybody so we can, have the best program we can.
Do you have a model for how you're synthesizing this data with the traditional ecological knowledge from a given area about the health of that water, of that watershed?
Do we have a what?
A model, like I'm just thinking about is there a way that you're synthesizing what people know about the health of that water through, lived experience and generational passed down information, and how you're synthesizing that with the data that you're gathering?
That's a really good question.
That's a good question.
I'm not sure that we have like a defined model to illustrate that. But that sounds like a really great artist project and how we would do that. We are working on creating a data sovereignty protocol with researchers and the data that is collected through TEK, and that is something that we are working on. We have a couple partners that we're working on that with, and it's developing. So that is, we don't have a model set in place yet, but we are working towards that.
I was wondering, I think that's a very good point, because I was wondering, with this collective Alaska Native perspectives, would it be possible to get some elders who, Crowe used to have fish camps where a person from Titlik would go to certain places, and that would be really interesting to know where those places are, and if anybody's around, or who That's very.
Yeah, interesting places to measure that we might not be measuring it right now.
Yeah, and to your points with the earthquake and the clam decimation, it's like, what was the pH like when there was clams versus now?
And there are people in town who would have that knowledge. I think of like Tom Anderson and Mark King. What's Mike's brother's name? I mean, Mike too.
Billy Jr.
Yeah. Even their dad, you know, that is, we are striving to collect that information. And Daryl knows we're recording a lot of this. We're in the process of recording it and preserving it. And then like with camp, we engage with local elders. And so when we get those dates, I am gonna reach out to you. And we're gonna come up with a list of elders to invite. And I really like the idea of having like an area map. And this is a beautiful way to like create storytelling and to kind of invoke some of those memories and also traditional practices. Like this happened here and this here, and now we're seeing here this change. And so our traditional practices shifting a little bit because of the environmental changes, and our food sources now moved upriver. And so we're very much aware of this, and we're connecting, you know, the TEK with the science to be able to understand these changes in the environment better. And so sometimes I like to explain, like, you know, the science monitoring that we do is like this really clear snapshot of what we're doing. And traditional knowledge is like the album, and that snapshot is within the album. And so depending on where we're at, what are we looking at? You know, on this page, we're looking at salmon runs. You know, Western science can give us a real nice snapshot. The traditional knowledge around that out of the weir and, you know, people in this community is gonna give us like that long-term knowledge about, you know, subsistence practices, how big the runs were, where they were coming from. You know, it's like with all of this combined, we can move forward in this way that really does support our environment and the health of everybody living in our communities. And that is the goal.
It's a different sort of continuous monitoring.
Yes.
Really lean on,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's cool. And I think to your point, like, we're lucky that when we begin our scientific inquiry, like before even like before our observations comes observations from our tribes and from our elders. And so that's like, we have a different scientific, you know, process almost because we are tribally led. And so that's really what our model begins with, is a different kind of scientific process where we're starting with our elders and our community members to give us their observations and their concerns. That's why we're investigating to begin with. And a great example of that is our intertidal restoration for Bidarki. You know, we weren't looking at spawning Bidarki, but community members came to us and said, we have concerns about declines in this species. And we said, okay, let's look into it. Let's begin this process. Which, yeah, is a really amazing way to operate. It's pretty cool. And to the point about recording stories, we are really excited that we are collecting stories from elders and from community members, specifically around subsistence. Could be, yeah, anything, experiences, knowledge, histories, hopes, concerns, issues. We're recording all of that for a couple different projects right now. And one of those will contribute to an online format of collective Alaska Native perspectives, and a lot of it will be able to just record it for our tribal communities to have and to decide what to do with from there, which is really important to us as well.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating to see the connection between elder knowledge over history to science.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we had clams, but now we have otter.
Yes, and to put it in some sort of model that you know, you can see over time.
Yeah.
I really like that idea, how we can depict that. So, I'm open to ideas.
Yeah. One thing we do have that maybe would be like the closest to that would be our climate change story map.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah. Which is really cool. It's on our website and it's it's like generations of change and it's looking at precipitation and temperature, for example. Like actual sort of data that's been collected, but of course data from our communities and elders too, and it follows past generations and future generations. It's really cool. I'll like plug our website, check it out. It's Alaska.org and it's on there. There's some more climate change work. And that's kind of maybe a little bit of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I could imagine something similar with respect to subsistence where
Yeah.
people were recording stories and it was visualized and.
Totally.
Yeah, we also, we have story maps also, on, those are on our website.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think both of them are.
Yeah, both of them are on our website, and those are lovely, like our climate change, Lily's story. These are amazing story maps that do talk about traditional knowledge over time and changes and people's concerns about the environment and, you know, where are the berries going and why are the salmon runs changing and like all of that is on that story map. It's powerful.
Where are your percolators, Seward or Anchorage?
They're in Seward, yeah. Our ocean acidification research lab is just on the far part of our Lutheran Primary Institute. Which if you ever are in Seward and you're like, I'd like to see it, just let us know and we will happily take you on a tour. And Carol and I obviously can talk for a long time, so we'll just talk your ear off about what's going on in there. And it's pretty fun. It's really cool to see all the shellfish we have and then also our lab spaces too.
Did you say you're cultivating mussels?
Not mussels, no. Different clam species, so we have like cockles, little necks, other clams, razors, something like that. Soft shell.
Sometimes we'll get in like,
Got
it's like really
gooey ducks.
opportunistic and for other people, like gooey ducks,
Yeah.
scallops, oysters.
We get novel
Abalone.
species from Southeast Alaska, because Southeast Alaska is losing population and the size, you know, and the size of their populations are diminishing, and so, yeah, we have quite a few Southeast species, like Ali said, like the.
Oh, sea cucumber.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
see
have
cucumbers
cucumbers.
every year, and so we like, you know, we, couple of them, like the abalone, are super hard to spawn. But I think we're making some progress on those. They look healthy to me, healthier than they did a while ago.
And you're doing scallops.
We're doing,
We had some
Ridgeback.
a month or so ago.
Yeah,
we just started this
scallops.
pretty new this summer.
Where are those farms?
Somewhere out of Southeast Alaska.
I think was the thing that they were finding them on like farms, like other shellfish farms or like wildlands of kelp, and they were like, how do we actually cultivate these? Yeah, so they're just popping up as like wild set, and they're like, okay, how can we actually utilize this as an opportunity potentially? So I'm looking at that a little bit. Yeah. We have a Facebook and Instagram if you are like, okay, I want to know more. It seems like there's a lot going on there. You're right, we got a lot going on. But there's information on our social medias if you're interested in that at all.
I want to thank you guys for coming. I think you guys are here for Cultural Week and then added bonuses.
Yeah.
Extra talks.
Yes, we are. Danae and Hoover, the cultural coordinator at the Village of Eac, invited us to come teach, present for the week. So I brought some friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christina asked us to come talk tonight, and then we were like, geez, we should go to the tribe and do our community visit. And yeah, it's just all really worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Christina.
Win in Cordova.
So is that past or coming up?
That's
It's happening
happening
right now. Yeah.
At the elementary school for the.
Yeah.
It is so fun.
I never pass a culture exam.
And
No,
it's so
it's
fun because it's, you know, seeing the kids, you know, year after year, it's like they remember, you know, who we are. It's like, yes, it's fun.
Yeah.
And Robin and I will be back next week.
Yep.
We'll be here all week next week.
Yep.
Be around for the Coral Network annual meeting.
Yeah, there's gonna be an amazing Tuesday night talk next week with some of our partners in the Coral Network. From Center for Alaska Coastal Studies.
And
And
Chugach Museum and, yeah, archaeological repository.
Yeah, awesome. We definitely wanna miss it. It's gonna be
Yeah.
awesome.
Next week, the Alaska Historical Society Convention.
Yeah, towards the end of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And this weekend is the Pioneers of Alaska.
Yes.
Everybody's coming to Cornell.
Everybody's
Buddy.
here. It's gonna be
Ooh.
We're on it.
And the weather's amazing. Well, that's only
Yes.
because you're here. It's always nice.
Every time I come
You're
over
here.
here, it's like this.
That's what I keep telling people. I'm like, it is always. Carol has never seen it rain in Cordova.
So you leave tomorrow.
Friday. Cue the rain. Well, in my defense, it's usually raining when I get home. And then they're always like, oh no, it's beautiful the whole time you were gone. Well, thank you guys again. We really appreciate that. Thank you for coming on such a beautiful day.
Yeah, we appreciate your time.
Cool.
Great, thank you.
Okay. You look so familiar.
Oh, we've met several times.
I know.
Scott Chugach.
Oh, okay.
Did they